Hi, I'm Graham Mack, and today I'm with Dr. Tony Miller, who's just completed 7 books about a group of Afghan teenagers who formed into a platoon. Their aim is to attack and destroy Afghan insurgents, the very people who destroyed their lives. The books are available on Amazon and Kindle, and as a paperback, and also as an audio book, which I had the honour of being selected to be the narrator. Now, once I'd narrated up to book 4, it became clear that these books were very accurate, and dare I say, almost true. Even map references are provided, so you can follow the action yourself. Dr. T is in the process of writing book 8. How will the current events in Afghanistan be reflected in book 8? Or will the book be put on pause? Hopefully, we're going to find out in the next few minutes. Welcome, Dr. T.
Thank you very much, Graham. Good to talk to you again. Yeah, a very difficult question because the books were written actually in real time. So the events in Afghanistan have really made me think about, are we ever going to get book 8 finished? Yeah, the story so far is quite interesting. You know, the Afghan girls formed an allegiance with the commander. They were held as sex slaves by the insurgents, and he released them. And the girls said that they would work for the commander and were prepared to be trained as long as they had the opportunity of killing those that abused them.
And in a lot of cases, it was the actual people, not just the organisations. It was the
That's
actual
right.
people.
They were after the individuals that abused them, and they really wanted revenge big time. And they were quite happy to do whatever was necessary, provided they could kill people by the bucket load. I think that was their own words.
And they have some interesting ways of killing them as well. It's not necessarily from a distance down the barrel of a telescopic sight, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, most of their work was behind enemy lines. And in order for them to escape, they'd just have to make sure that they did all the killing silently. So most of it was done by use of throwing knives and by swords. And that was something the commander specialized in, their leader. So they were all trained to use swords. But I mean, that wasn't the only thing. And obviously, they had to use guns and explosives and RPGs from time to time. But when they were really behind enemy lines, a long way away from any help, their best method of attack was by surprise and silence.
And it was very dangerous work. What was the attrition rate?
Well, the attrition rate's quite sad. There were 20 girls that signed up to start with. And of those 20, the original 20, 14 of them died. So although they were replaced because obviously other people joined the group as time moved on, there was somebody from Japan, there was somebody from Mongolia, and also somebody from Russia. So it became slightly an international group, which helped with their funding and the help they got. The Russians were incredibly supportive because the issue that the insurgents were up to big time was this business about supplying drugs to the world. So anything that could be done to slow that up or stop it was a real plus, and the Russians were happy to aid with the backing. So the two big backers were really America, as you would expect, and also Russia, which might be a surprise.
It causes some awkward moments, doesn't it, between the official Russian commanders and the top brass of the British, the Russians, and the Americans who are involved, because this is a secret organization.
Yeah, well, it's an organization that doesn't exist, although the commander's British and Lieutenant Kate Murphy's British. They don't really exist. And of course, the Americans aren't happy that the Russians are involved, and the Russians aren't that happy that the Americans are involved. But they all have exactly the same agenda. So they're all sort of turning a blind eye to what's happening in terms of all this cooperation. And so it goes. It was interesting. All of their arms were Russian. Their primary plane was American. The tank they managed to get their hands on was British. So it was a right mixture of bits and pieces, really. And then, of course, the Chinese got involved.
Yeah. And as I was narrating the book, throughout it there were hints of what could happen if the Americans and their supporting groups pulled out of Afghanistan. Now, this has turned out to be true, and in a period of less than 2 months. So what's the future for the platoon, and will Book 8 continue as planned? You've got to, even if you are continuing, you've got to be changing the vibe now, haven't you, the direction of it?
Sure. For sure. Well, you're quite right. It was like sort of, there were hints of light and grey about this happening. Everybody was worried, particularly the troops on the ground, that if they pulled out, the Afghan army as it was, although some of them were incredibly dedicated, a lot of them really still had their allegiance to the insurgents. And the fear was that if they ever did pull out, then it would just be chaos. And of course, this band, which is now 18 people, can't hold back a flood that size at all, no matter how clever they might think they are. So it's quite a problem for me, because in real time, I'm in April 2021, in the book. And of course, as we know, in July, it was let out that the Americans, the British, and other supporting nations would move out. And they were all gone. They were all gone by the third week in August.
Mm.
And then what happened? I mean, where all these people have come from, I have no idea. They've just seemed to have come up from every conceivable nook and cranny. The group of these people have just suddenly appeared. And of course, in a space of a few weeks, they've actually taken over the entire country. So what is left for the commanders group? I suspect they're going to have to go back and destroy a lot of the planes that have been left behind, like there's Apache helicopters that are in perfect working condition that have been left behind, and a mass of armaments, more than they could ever have dreamed of getting. And of course, lots of money. There's been lots of money left there. And of course, who's going to get the money from the poppy harvest?
Yeah, because Afghanistan's now one of the big producers, aren't they?
Yeah, I'd like to, if somebody would correct me on this, I'd be pleased to hear. But I mean, I think they're the second biggest producer of poppies and opium in the world. They're absolutely massive.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes you wonder, because a lot of these farmers, they say, oh, I have to grow this crop because I need to feed my family. I always think when they say that is, well, why don't you just grow food?
Yeah.
But there must be more money in it.
Yeah, you could just you put the same question about Adolf Hitler. I wanted to rule the world, and the problem was there were a few people that were getting in the way, so it was better to kill them. There's no justification for it at all. And it's really an insidious trade. Yeah. And, now they've more or less got carte blanche to improve productivity, produce even more. And, I'm sure if they're not the biggest supplier of opium in the world, they soon will be.
Do you think that, it's a very small team, the platoon. How many members in it?
Well, we're currently at 18. That's 18 including the commander. So you've got 17 girls plus the commander. Yeah. And who's male.
And they're all fanatically loyal to the commander as well.
Oh, absolutely. Blink twice and don't show respect, and one of them will chop you.
Yeah, and they do in some of the books. I don't want to give too much away.
Well, in the books, particularly the youngest at one time, which was a girl named Teller, she just wouldn't put up with it. She said, we're the ones that take all the risk. We're the ones that are constantly putting our lives on end, and people don't show us enough respect. And she said, age 14, and I'm not having it.
Well, even with that loyalty and their dedication to getting the job done, do you think if they were sent into what Afghanistan has become, that they could make a big difference? Or do you think the situation in Afghanistan is actually too far gone even for them?
Well, it's too far gone, but I think what's going to happen, and I'm giving perhaps a little secret away in the book, but I think it's fairly obvious. The people who are now running Afghanistan have got so much military hardware, somebody needs to go and destroy it. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to be pushed into an action, whether they like it or not, because you can't send the American troops back in, you can't send the British troops back in. That's all a done deal. So
Or
they're
the
the only ones
Russians. Yeah.
left, unfortunately, and they're going to have this terrible job of trying to destroy, helicopters and all the massive armaments that are there. Plus, I'm reliably told there are huge ammunition depots still undiscovered.
Right.
And, they really will have to be destroyed. And I think the commander's team, that's where they're going to be going next, although they don't know it yet.
I just think with the situation in Afghanistan, it makes the previous 7 books even more relevant now than they were when you wrote them and when they originally came out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for the reader or the listener, in terms of the audio books, I mean, it really is a fascinating story because I think if you read the newspapers, I don't think you get a really good feel for what life was like there. Whereas in the books, you actually pick it up. And I think if you're a woman in Afghanistan, it's a terrible life, really, particularly in the villages, absolutely terrible. And, that comes out through reading the books or listening to the books.
Yeah. They're action-packed. And with what's happened in Afghanistan lately, they've never been more relevant. They're called Cutt. They're available on paperback, Kindle, and audiobooks through Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. And they're by Dr. Tony Miller. And as always, a privilege to talk to you, Dr. T. And thanks for selecting me as the narrator of the audiobook version of Cutt. 7 in the series so far. More to come.
It was a good choice, Graham. You did a superb job. What was it, 120 different voices?
Yeah,
Absolutely
lots of different
amazing.
characters. Yeah, it's good fun to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.